Pam Bondi, the Department of Justice has praised your commitment to making the state of Florida the safest to live, work, and raise a family during your term as State Attorney General. In the recent past, you've made strides to protect the equal opportunity and personal safety of women. You've taken action as a prosecutor to ensure the right to own a firearm to all law-abiding citizens in America. You've adhered to your department's selected subject matters, priorities, and justice-securing values while advancing civil, legal, and personal rights. In order to maintain this trend toward providing justice, you need to consider expanding the population subject to your protection. If you advance protections for Black female victims of intimate partner violence, then their rates of victimization could reflect that of white women. You should coordinate a task force examining structural disparities experienced by Black women seeking justice for intimate partner violence in order to promote gender equality, conserve the ideals of your department, and limit future restrictions on firearms. As the Attorney General of the United States Department of Justice, your primary task is to uphold the rule of law, keep our country safe, and protect civil rights. You have the ability to organize task forces and initiatives seeking to eliminate issues that limit any American's access to justice and equal opportunity. Being sworn in on the 5th of February, your dedication to preserving order is excellently demonstrated in indictments, convictions, and deportations where you represented and defended the United States in court. Under your authority, the Department of Justice has sentenced 4 pharmacists for roles in a $13 million Medicare, Medicaid, and private insurer fraud conspiracy, secured a settlement of $360,000 in a sexual harassment lawsuit against a New Mexico property manager, and sentenced a cartel member to over 20 years in prison for trafficking hundreds of kilos of cocaine and methamphetamine. Your actions and statements on behalf of the United States government exhibit your true dedication to securing the health, safety, and justice of all Americans as guaranteed by our Bill of Rights. For someone who advocates for women's rights, action to serve justice to victims of intimate partner violence who are vastly female is a necessity. You know firsthand the experience of women in legislative, judicial, and executive systems of our government, becoming the 37th and first female Attorney General in Florida's history. Your 18 years in service as a prosecutor no doubt gave you invaluable insight into gender discrimination, intimate partner violence, and how victims seek reparations in court. On April 16th, a team of young women stood behind you as you announced the lawsuit of Maine by the United States, on the grounds that they failed to follow Title IX policies that ensure equal opportunity in education and sports to women. Being streamed by the Republican Fox News, you thanked these athletes' parents for
telling them it's okay to fight back and stand up for what they believe in.
In this court case initiated by your department, the state of Maine is at fault for
failing to protect women,
and this discrimination is heinous enough to be considered
a public safety issue.
When women are not granted the same opportunities as men or are not adequately protected in their safety, American citizens and especially women can count on Attorney General Pam Bondi to garner national attention and pursue legislative change or judicial reparations. The Public Religion Research Institute, a nonpartisan and nonprofit polling organization, found in a 2017 survey that half, 50%, of women say domestic violence is a critical issue to them. And as a woman with significant jurisdiction to enact change, many will look toward you. Just 1 month after your term began, the Department of Justice convicted a police officer from Sanger, California, for the sexual assault of 4 women, labeled an egregious breach of trust and an appalling abuse of power by one of your colleagues. You and your department's many attempts to empower women in government and protect them against violence extend to IPV reduction. Aside from personal safety, the Department of Justice publicly defends all civil rights, including the Second Amendment right to bear arms. The American Bill of Rights insists that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Our current executive administration and subsequently your department stringently adhere to this delineated right of law-abiding citizens. Under the previous administration of Joe Biden, this right was not emphasized and even limited by lack of protection. At the creation of your Second Amendment task force, you stated that Biden's administration and enforcement placed an undue burden on gun owners and vendors, prompting adjudication and legislation that remove these burdens and protect one of the most fundamental civil rights in America. Through this task force, you intended to ensure this right through litigation and policy to advance, protect, and promote compliance with the Second Amendment. In your announcement of the United States lawsuit against Maine, you claim that Maine's failure to comply with federal law brought legal action, a process that we can only assume would reproduce itself if a state were to limit its citizens' firearm access. Your actions to advance President Trump's pro-gun agenda display a commitment to advocating for citizen rights and the dominating policy objectives coming from Trump's office. Your obedience to and connection with the president, having acted as a special advisor in the office of the White House counsel, showcases respect for executive administration, a key principle of the Department of Justice. You claimed that if one young woman is in jeopardy, that's enough to be standing up here in your announcement of the lawsuit against Maine. You must know that there are already pieces of legislation that do protect women from IPV, even laws restricting firearm access. 18 U.S.C. 922 G8 was determined by a majority Republican Supreme Court to be constitutional in 2024. The Center for American Progress is a progressive news website whose senior director for gun violence, Nick Wilson, asserts, the law makes it illegal for subjects of an intimate partner violence restraining order to have guns, a policy that has found to be associated with reductions in Black intimate partner homicide. In a statistical analysis published by the journal Criminology, the Supreme Court ruled a law constitutional that protects women's right to safety and law-abiding citizens' right to bear arms. Your Department of Justice has been tasked with ensuring equal opportunities for American women and protecting fundamental civil rights. What if there was an efficient way to do both? Women of color are not exempt from your civil and legal protection. You may be hesitant to consider that race has any impact on one's risk of intimate partner violence victimization. In fact, social determinants of health like neighborhood violence, high rates of poverty, and limited education were found to be significantly associated with risk of intimate partner violence in a statistical analysis peer-reviewed and published in the American Journal of Preventive Medicine, written by Adam Rowe, who has a master's degree in preventive medicine. When controlling for these social determinants of health variables in his statistical analysis, Rowe found that the racial composition of a county no longer predicted its intimate partner homicide rate. Structural social determinants of health that increase one's risk of intimate partner violence are still racially disparate. This phenomenon appears in my home state of Colorado's 2023 Domestic Violence Report, where rural counties with limited housing and resources displayed a disproportionately higher rate of domestic violence fatalities compared to urban areas. In order to protect women's rights, it's necessary to consider social determinants like access to education and economic opportunity that asymmetrically disadvantage Black women. Social determinants of health also disproportionately limit access to services for Black victims of intimate partner violence, creating an unjust cycle that damages the American perception of justice provision. A series of academic interviews conducted by Bernadine Waller, who has received grants from the National Institute of Mental Health to publish studies in the Corporate Journal of Interpersonal Violence, expands on the experiences of Black women seeking help at a municipal community agency that provides for intimate partner violence victims. Black women face a six-fold higher risk of being murdered by an intimate partner, yet their experiences suggest gaps in child protective, health care, and housing services originating from a harmful one-size-fits-all approach that fails to consider cultural and social determinants of health. Jada describes a lack of trust in the police due to their callous responses. Khadija suggests that family courts lack compassion and are designed to break you up. And Ebony recounts the failure of medical professionals to provide basic crisis services. Black women who generally have an increased risk of intimate partner violence due to social determinants of health like economic opportunity and exposure to crime are faced with the shortcomings of the criminal, legal, child protective, shelter, healthcare, and mental health systems that do not facilitate the provision of justice. The protection of basic rights like one's right to safety and reparations from their offenders has been extended to women by the Department of Justice. This expansive protection should also include women of color, 61% of whom say domestic violence is a critical issue to them personally. If one young woman in jeopardy is enough to prompt you and your department to take court action, could you take action against a structural, systematic perpetrator? The lack of cultural responsiveness service providers display to Black female victims can be found in legislative structures too. Like 18 U.S.C. 922 G8, many laws intended to decrease rates of intimate partner violence among all women are already in place, but uneven enforcement and access can create white but not Black intimate partner homicide reductions. Examining rates of intimate partner homicide and types of firearm limitations by county, Doctor of Criminology Andrew Gray finds in his academic statistical analysis that certain gun laws are not universally effective for women across distinct groups. For example, firearm restrictions imposed and enforced by the state reduce rates of white intimate partner homicide, but not those of Black intimate partner homicide. Firearm restrictions for those with an active domestic violence restraining order, much like 18 U.S.C. 922 G8, reduced Black but not white intimate partner homicide, but Black women are less likely to receive a protective order. States with mandatory arrest policies like the one in Colorado see lower rates of total female and Latina intimate partner homicide. In 2023, the Colorado Domestic Violence Fatality Review Board found that 20% of domestic violence fatality cases involved a protection order at some point, indicating their protective function. The Attorney General of Colorado is also seeking to implement a lethality assessment program for officers across the state with aid from a Justice Administration grant from the federal government. Your department is already making strides to research and limit intimate partner violence at the state level, all while state legislation has been found to disproportionately protect white women. It's clear that a more robust and nuanced understanding of factors that contribute to risk of intimate partner homicide is necessary to adequately serve justice to all women in your country, and a federal task force is just the place to start. A Department of Justice task force or initiative dedicated to exploring and reversing inequalities in intimate partner violence victimization can ensure justice for Black women while maintaining foundational civil rights like gun ownership. Because of Black women's intersectional identities and histories of police brutality, racial profiling, and unjust criminalization, the community's perception of American institutions and justice provision are poor. A self-reported survey conducted by five-time award-winning author Erica Sika found that African Americans and women exhibit significantly heightened perceptions of wrongful convictions. When Black women do not have the agency to seek and receive justice, public opinion of your department and your leadership come under fire. If the Department of Justice will not sit by when women are discriminated against or when their personal safety is compromised, I urge you not to overlook such a significant population who are facing discrimination and violation of their rights owed to them by the American government. Current research on the effect of government structures on rates of intimate partner violence suggests that outcomes must be contextualized in terms of structural factors. Rates are significantly higher among Black women who face the highest mortality and morbidity resulting from intimate partner violence victimization. Black women are at higher risk of being victimized, and risks originate from asymmetrically enforced legislation, limited access to adjudication, and lack of representation among executive processes. You can limit these risks. You've already coordinated task forces and oversee more than 115,000 employees. When another initiative announcement is necessary to protect American justice and citizens, it is your job to compose it. If you have the capacity to protect the opportunities and rights of a few female athletes in Maine, it would be a major failure to ignore the threat to personal safety experienced by expansive communities of Black women across the country. A task force dedicated to researching the provision of justice to and improving structural disparities experienced by Black female victims of intimate partner violence, a historically underserved population, is a necessity for equal securement of justice. This task force would expand your championing of women's rights. The task force's further research into firearm legislation can limit the restriction of civil rights to lawful citizens. This task force could empower your department and the United States government as an agent of liberty and protection in the eyes of the public. Racial disparities in intimate partner violence protective and provision services call for a task force to be established by the Department of Justice that would ensure equality for women, curb restrictions to firearm access, and display the department and yourself as true advocates for justice.